Tell us your name and tell us about your project.
So my name's Leon Foucault. I'm a French physicist. Uh, my project they created in 1851. Um, Call it the pendulum. It consists of sort of a metal bobber that sits on suspended from a wire from the ceiling, if you will. Um, Basically, you can put the system into motion, and the rotation of the Earth will cause a degree of change with the oscillations of the actual bob itself. So that was sort of the point of it. Down at the base, there's a dial, if you will, numbers in a circular formation, and then a small little pad with numbers that lay in sort of like a clock formation. And with these, you can identify the degree of the change in swing of the actual pendulum. What we were trying to do or find, that was basically what I said before. The purpose was to provide evidence that the Earth rotates. This was sort of a controversial topic that nobody really knew the answer to, and discovered that with the momentum of the Earth and the momentum of the bob, uh, they'll actually end up throwing each other off when the pendulum is put into motion. So that's why you'll see the change in oscillation pattern and the degree at which it moves from where it started from. Where the project occurred, so my first actual creation I did in 1851, and I was at the Paris Observatory in France. Um, that was my first real full-scale build of the project. A few weeks later, I created um, a second one that's actually at the Pantheon in Paris, France. Um, Funny story, one of the bobs that we were using actually fell at one point and was damaged, and that actually sits in a museum now to the side of the full working pendulum. Significant events around that time. So during around the 1850s, 1851, 1852, the United States were having some controversies about slavery. The movement against that. The Underground Railroad was happening. Harriet Tubman was transporting slaves away from where they were into new locations. At the same time, few new states were added to the United States. I think one was California, just for example. The New York Times was also founded in September of that same year. Who else was involved? Nobody else was involved in the actual creation of the project. The assembly of the pendulum, with it being the size that it was, obviously I couldn't do by myself, so I obviously had a team of people to help me build the actual full-scale model, but all the calculations and the physics and the actual concept behind the design was it was solely my creation. My role in the project, since I was mostly the only one that did anything for it, I would say I was the physicist, I was the creator, and like I said before, I did all the calculations, I analyzed the data, I understood what it meant, and went from there. So I guess you could say I'm just the project manager, if you will. What impact did you have on the physics community? So the impact I would say that I had was great. Now my pendulum is on exhibit at multiple science museums all around the world. Because of the simple design and creation of the pendulum, the students in school and teachers can use this design as basically as sort of a class project. You can create it with very simple materials, and you can do small scale things. It obviously doesn't have to have a 200-foot wire with a 60-pound lead ball attached to it. You can do it with something small like a marble and a string. because of this and because of the ability to recreate this, I think that my project has had a pretty big impact in teaching people what I've done and what my research has meant. How did you begin the swinging of the pendulum? It's a good question. At first, a lot of people would assume that you just pull the ball back and let it go. That's how most experiments, sort of the at-home small versions, would be done. But because of the precise location that is needed to swing the actual bob itself, we would pull the bob into place and attach it to a sort of like a holding post with a string, and we would burn through the string so that there would be no outside forces, when it would release. It would just be a straight shot directly opposite the tension that the string was holding. Because if you're letting it go with your hands, you can add some extra lateral forces that would throw your swing off.